but no one's worthy.
A legend like Darth Vader is respected and feared, not just because of his aura, but also because we've seen how he turned over to the dark side. Luckily, the DC Universe has been taking some notes from him, and the TV Regent will show you the receipts with the most iconic DC villain transformations in the movies. Yeah, I don't think there's a better way to kick off this clip than with a transformation so slick. My rhyming skills aside, I'd like to highlight how effortless this transition is in its execution. The contrasting personalities from June Moon to the Enchantress also helps this stand out so early on in the movie. Yeah, I won't even make fun of the woman who called upon the power of Christ to protect her from the evil being who was standing in front of her. I'd have done the exact same thing. This may not have been a good film, but you can't deny this scene's brilliance.
What's going on?
Listen, I came into this movie for Megan Fox, and I sure as heck did not expect to see Bebop and Rocksteady transforming the way they did. It's a drawn-out sequence which allows for the effects to do their thing, and I don't mind the CGI at all. What strikes me the most is how comfortable they are being a rhino and a warthog. Seriously though? I'd be freaking out if I saw my buddy turn into an animal in front of me, while I too am turning into one as well.
Check out the horn! Yeah, baby!
To be honest, these two actually were the best part of the movie, and that's saying a lot considering what I just said earlier about my primary motivation for this flick.
What is happening to us? I don't know, but this feels great!
This?
Yeah, this isn't a film that anyone's going to remember, but I clearly do because this transformation scarred me as a kid. They've always warned us about the dangers of AI. And here we see it extending to fembots, a concept that's usually looked at as a promising future prospect. This woman is essentially a side character with no importance, but all of that changes once the computer turns her into a killing machine. The detail that disturbed me most was the metal piece clamping on her jaw and silencing her screams. Yeah, it's quite horrifying that you can't even scream as your humanity is violently torn from you.
What is that?
Brace yourself. Hold on!
If Going on Demon Time ever had a face, it would be Sabak. His transformation was one of the quicker ones, but his reveal did have a strong impact on the movie. Heck, his character design was way better than Black Adam himself. Bro got flamed by demon lords to become the best version of that trope. It doesn't say anything, as is the case with most transformations, but man, it was almost as if you could hear him thinking, yeah, let's see how they beat me in this form. I know I just said this transformation was a bit instantaneous, but even so, I feel they did well with the pacing here. We opened up this video with the Enchantress, so it's time to take a look at her brother, who gives us a slightly better transformation in terms of context. Yes, his transition is triggered by his sister, but the way he accumulates people in his surroundings to become this big, bad monster was thrilling to watch. You know, I've always liked the relationship between Enchantress and Incubus. They may be ancient dark gods, but they're still siblings, which means they very clearly care for and even love each other like siblings would. Also, I can't watch the subway scene and not think about that moment from Invincible, where Omni-Man did the unthinkable.
They scream and they cry. Which is your day now?
Jonathan Crane may use the Scarecrow mask to hide his face, but I'd like to believe the mask actually helps him take off his disguise as a somewhat normal human. The man is simply wearing a weird looking mask, but this transforms his character more than anything else. Just look at how Falcone reacts once he's in front of the Scarecrow. Yes, there's a science behind these reactions, but that's not the point here. The "would you like to see my mask" question.
Would you like to see my mask?
It's like the equivalent of, "want to know how I got these scars?" If you think about it, kudos to Cillian Murphy as well for managing to create such an impact with not a lot of screen time.
I'm probably not very frightening to a guy like you, but these crazies, you can't stand it.
This city is mine.
Well, the main focus of attention in this scene might be Starro, but he's not the one transforming. On the contrary, he transforms a vast majority of his opposition into his followers by using his hive mind, Starfish. Technically, he's adding more villains to his army, so it does count as a transformation. And it's a very creepy way of trying to gain the advantage as well. I do have some doubts regarding how most of those guys just gave up and let the Starfish take over them, but hey, they also had a giant Starro in front of them, so I'm not going to be too hard on these folks, alright? This city is mine! And yeah, it was kind of funny to see how King Shark was absolutely useless with his defense, but couldn't be taken over anyway because of how his face is shaped. This is one movie that Ryan Reynolds would love to forget, but that doesn't mean Mark Strong has to. I think he did just well as Sinestro, and he should be up for consideration moving forward. That is, of course, if they actually want to make a good Green Lantern film now. This actually comes as a post-credit scene, and it isn't very long, but it does just about enough to give the fans something to cheer about. But seriously, man, what a tease this was. Mark Strong was perfect in this role, and this scene got me so hyped for a sequel. After reading Jeff Johns' run on Green Lantern comics, you'll come to know that Sinestro is one of the best supervillains. However, the shortfall was in Hal Jordan, and pretty much everything else the movie had in terms of plot and CGI. I guess you can't really expect much from a film that was mocked in a Deadpool revisionist sequence. Barbara Minerva may not go down in history as an iconic DC villain, but her gradual transformation into the Cheetah was one of the few high points of Wonder Woman 1984. She essentially uses the Dreamstone to make this a possibility. And we start seeing her powers come into effect across various scenes in the film. The final form, of course, shows up in the final battle, and I've got to give it to Kristen Wiig for being able to portray a wildcat character with such confidence. The reason I'm saying that is because we're used to seeing her play funny characters on Saturday Night Live, but here she is, kicking butt and turning into a cheetah lady. And yes, while the movie may have been a joke in the cinema, the design for the cheetah wasn't bad at all. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't mind seeing more of this character in James Gunn's version of the DCU. The Bane we saw in The Dark Knight Rises was a master tactician and brutal strategist. Yes, he was also a simp, but the Bane we got to see in Batman and Robin was a whole other monstrosity.
Time to scream.
He was literally like a piece of meat with giant veins, but don't let that take anything away from the fact that his transformation from skinny dude to absolute beast was freaking terrifying. They should have used this scene for all those protein powder ads that guarantee muscle growth. You know, now that I think about it, if you give this guy's design and strength to Tom Hardy's version of the character, then we've actually got ourselves an accurate comic book portrayal of Bane. All of that is wishful thinking, however, so let's just focus on how traumatic it was to see Antonio get pumped with an overdose of steroids, venom, and whatnot. Was it really a good idea to leave him alone in there with all those people still around? Bro has just gone from stick to stone. He'd definitely want to test out that newfound strength. Dr. Sivana's transformation in Shazam is actually a very neat display, but I feel all of this could have been avoided if the wizard had just been nice to him as a kid rather than being mean as if it's some necessary rule to raise children. Seeing all the forces converge into the orb to create the real Dr. Sivana was quite an ominous experience. Even though he's the villain in this movie, I did root for him up until the point where he killed his own family. Bro wasn't pure of heart, but he was somewhat worthy, unlike how everyone made him out to be. He was just given a bad hand in his life. I also love how whenever Sivana's on screen, the film gets very mature and serious. Yeah, Mark Strong definitely needs to be taken more seriously as an actor. I mean, we just saw him in the Sinestro entry earlier, didn't we? When it comes to bold villains, he sure had a great introduction.
You seek a pure soul, old man, but no one's worthy.
And I'm still rooting for him to become the next Lex Luthor. Yeah, I know Nicholas Hoult has the role, but a man can dream, right?
Make mankind turn on each other.
You seek a pure soul, old man, but no one's worthy.
What happened to his wife?
Nobody knows for sure. She's presumed dead. Freeze needs extreme cold to survive. His cryosuit uses diamond-enhanced lasers to keep him at 0 degrees.
Mr. Freeze at number 13? You must be thinking I'm crazy, right? Well, maybe if you stop making fun of him and understood why he started committing crimes, it'll help you gain more context into his psyche. When he's not making puns, doing horrendous dabbling or overacting, you can truly feel Arnold actually trying to be a good Mr. Freeze. I even felt something genuine when that tear froze. At the end of the day, bro just wanted to save his wife, which is a noble intention, although it did lead to an unfortunate transformation.
Allow me to break the ice. My name is Freeze.
Which I suspect must have also affected his sense of humor. It's actually a painful existence to be so helpless, and I feel kind of bad for Mr. Freeze because even though he does manage to get back the woman he loves, will they ever be able to live a normal life? Also, seeing all of this from Batman's perspective was a refreshing take on the general notion of transformation scenes. The rest of the movie is definitely not getting any similar compliments, but hey, I'm going to praise Arnold at every chance I get. Also, I know I might be glazing, but don't you think you would have been able to pull off a much better job if you had a good script and editor?
Mr. Icicle, I'm Mr. 10 Below. Ding, ding! Call me Snow Miser. Whatever I touch turns into
I know this movie focuses on Aquaman, but man, they sure put in a lot of effort to try and make David Kane be as similar to Tony Stark as possible. The transformation from David to Black Manta was a long and detailed one, starting with the Ocean Master's provision of weapons to him making the actual suit. Yes, I'm not blind. I can see how blatantly the whole suit prep scene is made to rip off Tony Stark working on his Iron Man suit. But then again, it's these similarities that place him as high as number 12, because I'm not sure anything else would have looked as cool as this. I actually found it funny that David just turned this from a revenge fuel scene to a motivational 80s training montage. But hey, say what you will, this guy took highly experimental Atlantean tech and massively improved it. Turning a massive, unwieldy rifle into an integrated helmet is an insane feat for a solo researcher, working with what might as well be alien tech to him. And the final result is quite impressive too. Bro ended up saving Aquaman from the Amber Heard treatment by stopping their romantic kiss. I guess he must have seen the Johnny Depp documentary, eh? I don't think I'll ever accept anyone other than Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. She's just become synonymous with the character. On that note, I'd also like to say that Jared Leto is one heck of a lucky dude to have been able to play a lover, even though he's the worst possible Joker to have come out in the modern era. Hey, don't come at me in the comments if you're his fan, okay? Remember, this is the same dude who became famous for It's Morbin Time. I like that this scene is from Harley's perspective, because her relationship with the Joker is so abusive and toxic.
You're not leaving me. You're not leaving me!
But when she relives it, she remembers it as a romantic moment. I guess that's exactly why she's a crazy one despite being a psychologist. Anyway, I feel Suicide Squad did some justice to its audience by showing us Harley Quinn's whole leap of faith sequence, which then turns her into DC's most interesting female character. She doesn't magically turn white or change her outfit, but this does symbolize a new beginning for the Doctor. This is now Joker's muse, and her behavior sure doubles down on it. On a side note, imagine if Joker had jumped into the wrong vat and gone like, oh crap, she's not in there.
your doomsday.
General Zod was a great villain in Man of Steel, and it turns out that they loved him so much at DC that they literally brought him back as Doomsday in Batman vs Superman. I'd like to say that was the end of it, but then we have the Flash as well, so I think it's better to just focus on the transformation. There isn't a lot of direct transitioning shown, but all the preparations and ingredients needed for it are on display. Yeah, sure, Lex Luthor is a bit of a goofball here, especially with how he lacks a system, which should technically not be easy to take over. Anyway,
Of my blood.
the horror elements of this transformation elevated to the top 10 of this list, and the final product showing up in front of Luthor and Superman was a nice highlight. The roar he lets out and the havoc that follows are perfect examples of what happens when Frankenstein is crazier than his monster. But yeah, by not showing the actual morphing of the body, we as the audience are left to imagine how this demonic entity came to being, and I personally think that that's a nice way to not only represent Doomsday, but also go slightly easier on the CGI budget. Not that it would have made much of a difference considering all that happens after the transformation.
Born to destroy you.
Edward Nygma, come on down! You're the next contestant on Brain Drain!
If a scene has Jim Carrey in it, just let it be known that the crazy is going to get cranked up by at least 10 times the acceptable amount. Sometimes I wonder if they even give him a script at all. Like for this scene, I can totally see the director telling him, hey, you know what, you don't need a script for this, just have fun with it. Heck, with the way Edward Nygma becomes the Riddler, it almost felt as if he was watching one of those Scooby-Doo live-action movies. Jim Carrey really managed to capture the main chunk of the Riddler's goofy mannerisms from the Adam West era, but he also made sure to give us a modern dark villain. Bro was so wacky in the transition that it felt as if he was going backwards and forwards at the same time. Now, I get the whole idea of extracting intelligence from his victims and stuff, but you know what would have made this transformation even more messed up for the character? If there was a creepier explanation for the Riddler's wackiness.
Several geniuses, a gaggle, a swarm, a flock of freaking Freuds.
Imagine that as he extracts brainwaves, he also gets a lot of identities and personalities with them, which means he's got a whole collection of varied people living in his mind and is driving him nuts. But he can't stop. Regardless of the explanation behind it, the transformation was entertaining to say the least, and I sure as heck had a whole lot of fun watching it.
Fred! Babe! You are fired! Or should I say, terminated?
A goddess like Wonder Woman is hard to shock, but Sir Patrick does it quite well when he reveals that he is actually Ares, the god of war. Yeah, all the Kratos fans need to remember that Ares actually has Greek mythology backing him, so I better not see any comments comparing these two. No hate to the game though, I'm a huge fan. Okay, back to the scene. There's a lot of exposition that goes on before we actually see Patrick turning into Ares, but to me, that actually works because there's a decent enough build-up with a good payoff. Princess Diana tries her best to attack her opponent, but in his own words, she does have a lot to learn at this point. The backdrop of explosions and flames serve as a great bit of decoration to make Ares look even more badass once he does transition to his true form. The suit getting forged had to be the main highlight here, and I'm sure Zack Snyder had a role to play when it came to making this scene come to life. It has his DNA written all over it, which makes the scene extremely dramatic. Now, this may not deal with the transformation as such, but I still feel that we need to say that they severely underpowered Ares here to allow Wonder Woman to win. Bro must have really let himself go in the thousands of years that followed a moment where he almost bodied Darkseid.
They're everything you say, but so much more.
Yeah, Uma Thurman may have established herself as a badass in Quentin Tarantino's Kill Bill films, but she was always a baddie, if you know what I mean. Just take a look at her as Poison Ivy. That woman is probably the main reason why I even watched this film more than once. Dr. Pamela Isley may not be seen as the most standout woman in any room, but after she turns into the plant-loving murderer, her entire persona is redefined. Sure, that weirdo had it coming because that's no way to deal with rejection, but at the same time, I find it a little weird that a woman who loves plants would burn down an entire place filled with them.
I am nature's arm. Her spirit. Her will.
Well, at least we got to see Dr. Pamela turning into Poison Ivy after getting attacked in such a brutal manner. It justifies her actions right after, and yes, they do get the seduction aspect of the character right, although I personally still found it a little cheesy. But hey, I did read somewhere that the director wanted this to be the 90s version of the 60s Batman show.
Poison.
So if that was what they were going for, then I can't really fault them for what happened in this scene. Can blame him for the rest of the movie though. Even so, I'm surprised that this movie managed to get in as many entries as it did for today's video.
Dr. Isley? Pamela? You look great.
The Penguin is getting a lot of love nowadays thanks to Colin Farrell's brilliant performance in the HBO Max series. But for now, let's go back to the good old 90s when we first saw this character in his true sense. Danny DeVito gave us a sick performance, but to understand the transformation, we need to go back to when he was just a kid locked inside a cage, eating cats to vent his anger. Yeah, this film's opening was so unsettling that kids got traumatized by it, including yours truly. We never actually see what the baby looks like, so we're thinking about the scariest possible creature inside that coffin-like cage. However, at the same time, we feel sorry for the baby as he's just thrown away to float down a freezing river. And yes, this entire sequence happens on Christmas of all days. Tim Burton sure knew how to put the goth in Gotham, and that helps enhance this scene's impact. The moment we saw that kid reach a bunch of penguins, we just knew what was in store for us, didn't we? What this scene does is justify the penguin going from an unfortunate child to a true monster, and due to no fault of his own. We don't even see him in this sequence, but its narrative is more than enough to make us marvel at it. Here's a fun fact for you. Paul Rubens, aka Pee Wee Herman, Penguin's dad, also played him in the Gotham TV series and did a magnificent job in both roles. Harvey Dent is best known for his iconic line about living long enough to become a villain if, of course, you don't die a hero. As far as that's concerned, I can proudly say that he is indeed a man of his word, because he makes the sacrifice of becoming Two-Face for us just to prove his point. Alright, on a serious note, this is a tragic scene, not just for Harvey, but also for Bruce Wayne, because they both lose the woman they love. Having said that, this was exactly the kind of motivation that Harvey needed to turn into one of Batman's creepiest and scariest characters. The acting is brilliant too, and we may not have seen a literal transformation in front of our eyes, but we do see half of Harvey's face getting burnt off, which is the trigger for his transition. The hospital scene shows his final form later, which is spooky AF, but I personally look at it as a finishing touch. And yes,
No, you're not.
the real change isn't in the appearance, but rather in the mind. Bro was so upset that Batman came for him instead of Rachel, and it showed just how much he loved her. This was definitely more of an emotional moment for the characters and the viewers, which is what makes this movie and Christopher Nolan so special. I also have to shout out the Joker for his diabolical plan, because he knew that Bruce Wayne would only be able to save one of his hostages, not both. And, as it turns out, he got exactly what he wanted the moment Batman saw Harvey instead of Rachel.
I'm sorry, Harvey.
I'm sorry to let you down. If you lose your faith in me, please keep your faith in people.
Speaking of the Joker, he'll forever remain an iconic character for a plethora of reasons, and this transformation is one of them. Jack Napier may have let his intrusive thoughts take over more often than not, especially because of his shady affair with his boss's mistress, but it did lead him to turning into Batman's most iconic villain. Falling into a vat of chemicals isn't every man's dream, but in Napier's case, it gave him the right push to go ahead and do what he always wanted to do: go crazy. Seeing him turn into the Joker was like a two-step process. After all, it involved seeing him struggle in the acid and then emerge to become the crazy craziest of crazies. We get to see the final output when Joker meets Carl Grissom and bids him farewell with a flurry of bullets. I personally love this moment of vengeance because the Joker doesn't show any anger here. He's simply being goofy and having fun, which is the true essence of his character. As far as the movie's concerned, Elfman's score, Burton's atmosphere, Keaton's Batman, and Nicholson's Joker have all aged very, very well. On that note, I must say that Jack Nicholson does have a knack for playing crazy characters named Jack or Jake so naturally. It's almost as if he's actually putting on a facade in real life and letting his true self loose in these characters. A broken heart can do all kinds of things to a man, and if this transformation doesn't prove that point, then I don't know what does. John Osterman would have never imagined that he'd turn into an omniscient being with ridiculous superpowers, but then again, he also wouldn't have expected Janie to have left him alone to die inside that room. Look, I'm not going to blame the woman for what happened, but come on, seeing the woman you love just walk away from you like that would have definitely made you lose faith in human existence. Luckily for John, he not only managed to survive, but also gave us a super badass transformation. Seeing his body disintegrate may not have been the ideal way to kick things off, but the final form of Dr. Manhattan, which shows up right after, was definitely a sight to behold. The scene transitions just like its main character from dread to awe. All the scientists who left John to die are now looking at him as if he's some kind of god, and he might as well be if we consider just how powerful he really is. Now, it's hard to understand his motivations, but judging from how the world sees him, and also him murdering Rorschach towards the end of the film, I think it's safe to say that Dr. Manhattan does play the role of a villain. I'm still waiting on DC to give us a Superman versus Dr. Manhattan fight, just so you know. Well, Heath Ledger may not have had a proper transformation scene, but Joaquin Phoenix did, and as it turns out, is good enough to take the top spot today. We got some crazy transformations building up to this one, and even though it's a simple act of dressing up for Arthur Fleck, the implications are so much more. This is when Arthur completely gives into his madness and becomes the entity he feels is the truest form of himself. Putting on that suit and makeup isn't just some kind of fashion statement, it's the Joker's version of wearing a Batman suit. This is his escape from the brutality of the world, and if I'd like to squeeze in my own interpretation, I'd say that this was his moment of liberation. Joaquin Phoenix also adds so much value to the scene with its acting, because you need to nail each and every one of those emotions to properly communicate what the Joker's all about. The stairway dance is obviously iconic, and it stands as some kind of celebration for a character who has finally stopped caring about society and what it's done to people like him. You know, I just spoke about Heath Ledger, and we already saw Jack Nicholson's Joker not too long ago, so just imagine all the different interpretations of this character we could get. It's practically endless, since he doesn't even fully know himself. I mean, Robert Pattinson's eyeliner Batman already had his own version of the character to deal with in Barry Keoghan, and I've got a feeling he won't be the last to play the Joker either. At this rate, I might just be able to create a whole video just on the different renditions of the character. Hope you liked the video. Please subscribe to the TV Regent, and here's another video that I know you're going to enjoy.
You thought you could walk away?